Call to order Safety and Public Works, May 2nd, 2022, 6:30 PM in Brainerd City Council chambers. We have 9 items on the agenda tonight, first of which is a event street closure application for Memorial Day Parade and ceremonies. And if Mr. Sandy, if you want to tell us about this one, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. So this is our annual Memorial Day Parade and ceremonies. Those take place on May 30th, 2022, beginning at 9 a.m. and ending at 11 a.m. It starts at the Laurel Street Bridge, and then it continues on to a parade route from B Street on up 3rd Avenue up to the cemetery, where they have some ceremonies there. So at 9 a.m. they start off by closing off Laurel Street. They have a ceremony right by the bridge there, and then they proceed to the Olivet Memorial, where they will honor military men and women who have died in service to their country. Then all the festivities move across town to over by Evergreen, where there's a short ceremony that will take place. This event has gone well in the past. They've worked with us on street closures on Laurel Street. They typically don't have any street closures over in Northeast. They'll place some no parking signs along the route, and we typically work with them on that. The applicant has attached maps. Otherwise, the conditions that are noted on the application are to submit their insurance certificate prior to the event. The request for traffic control should be made 1 week prior to the event. All signs and banners should be removed at event conclusion. And then they've been good about this, but coordinating with police staff on event needs and the street closure when the time comes.
Is there anything different this year about this event than it was last year?
Nope.
How many years have they been doing it? Any idea?
For as long as I've been here.
Okay. All right. Got a motion?
No questions. I'd move to approve as presented with the conditions listed.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Next item is another event application for the Corpus Christi Procession. If you want to tell us a little about this one, Mr. Sandy?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, this is another annual event hosted by St. Francis and St. Andrew's Church. They have a procession that takes place on June 19, 2022. It's basically a procession from St. Francis to St. Andrew's Church on Willow Street. And that just consists of light amplified sound out of the back of a vehicle. They have, I think, 3 short stops along the way where the group prays, and then they just ask for assistance with crossing busy intersections like Washington Street, Oak Street, down to Willow. So it's really a pretty simple event. They just process from one location to the other.
Great. Any comments, questions?
Motion.
Go ahead.
Move to approve the attached application under the conditions listed.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Looks like we're not gonna have any streets open this summer.
All summer. Number 3 is going to be another event street closure application for the Brainerd Jaycees Street Fest. Go ahead and tell us about this one, Mr. Sandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this event is also an annual event hosted by the Jaycees. This one will take place on July 22nd and July 23rd. On the 22nd, it'll begin at 12 or noon, and then on July 23rd, it ends at 12 a.m. So it's Rib Fest, games, activities, music, and they do it on Front Street and the Mills parking lot. So they ask every year to close Front Street from 6th to 8th. They leave the sidewalks open, and then they have the Mills parking lot closed off for that event. Years past has gone very smoothly. They have this down to a science. They work with BPU on power and water. They contract out all of their restrooms and waste removal. They have signs and banners they put up and take down at the event. And the street closure is the same as they've asked for years prior. So we don't have any issues with this event besides the conditions listed in the application, which are our standard stuff with the insurance, traffic control, working with PD on the event, and the one thing that we did note that the fire department asked for is a crowd manager certificate, and so they'll be getting with them on that to ensure they have that person in place for the event. Otherwise, that should be it.
Okay. Are we talking about a crowd management person from the city or from the Jaycees?
Jaycees would have to supply that. It's a simple certification course for events over 1,000 people, I believe.
Okay.
Question? Is that different from past years, or is that?
Yeah, I don't know if that was just something that the fire department, we have Katie Kaufman certified for that Canoe Days event happening down in the park, but I don't know where or when the certification started, if it was in place prior to this, but it's just something that the fire department made note of this year with that event down at the river, and then for this one being it's over 1,000 people.
Okay. Ready with a motion, then I'd move to approve the attached application with conditions listed.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Only discussion point I have involved with this group, I do know that they're having trouble finding stage and sound. If anybody has a suggestion in here or public, I know the normal silent partner has another engagement that same weekend. That's never happened before, so I'm sure it'll all get sorted out, but that's where they're at right now. So either that or they'll be playing on the parking lot ground. Oof, yeah. Any more discussion? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Fourth item, approval of bids for improvement 22-07 East River Road improvements. Mr. Sandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So at the park board meeting on April 26th, the park board looked at the bids for Mississippi Landing Trailhead Park. They let this out to bid here about a month and a half ago. Got 2 bids back. The project was split into 2 kind of separate areas, being that the city council and the city engineer are inevitably responsible for the right-of-way improvements, anything inside the city right-of-way. We kind of separated this project out to the park project and the road project. You can see the bids that came in, one from Custom Builders, one from Linco Inc. Custom Builders was significantly lower than Linco. So that $2,365,000 is total improvement cost. That's park and street. Of that $2,365,000, about $518,000 is the road improvement work. The engineer's estimate for that improvement for the entire park was about $2,773,000, of which about $512,000 that was estimated to be attributed to East River Road. This just kind of speaks to the volatility of the market right now. You have contractors that are very, very hungry for work, and you have contractors that maybe are bidding pretty high on stuff, maybe hopefully getting it and making a lot of money, or just not getting the project at all, or the owner not moving forward with it. There were some questions at the park board meeting brought up about, these costs are so far apart. What is staff's comfort level with the bids that were received? Custom Builders was very active during the bid process and asking questions. They asked us a lot of detailed questions, which is a good sign. That means that they're reviewing the plans, trying to understand them, really making sure that they know what they're bidding on. And so WSB and city staff were comfortable with what we got for questions from Custom Builders, which means that they are very willing to do the project, understand the project, and they're very excited. They want to do work in this area more, and so a couple of the areas that we think that they were lower, in which they were, where they have their own concrete crews, which a lot of the park consists of flat work, and so there's a lot of cost savings in that with not having to hire subcontractors, and so we feel like it's a very good bid. Obviously, the East River Road improvements are what you guys are considering tonight. The park board did approve the park portion to enter into contracts. What staff would be looking for tonight is for the city council to approve the contracts for the East River Road portion in that total amount of $517,618.47. And that's all I have. If there's any questions.
So this likely being the same company doing both the road and the parks, they're gonna do all of it in unison?
Yeah, so when we talked, or when we were designing the plans with WSB, we tried to ensure that that area before the 4th of July is usually very, very busy. And so we didn't want them doing the road improvements until after the 4th. And we've been coordinating with Dave on that from community action standpoint, being that Fish Street up here on top of the hill, there's going to be work going on up there. And so we've been making sure that we're trying to do this in as least of a issue as possible with traffic and things around that area, so.
Okay. So likely start date for either? Do you have one yet?
So the park can start right away. They can work in that area, basically as soon as we get contracts signed and everything's in place. But like I said, the road improvements aren't going to start until after the 4th.
Got it. Any more discussion, guys?
Motion when you're ready.
Go ahead.
I move to approve the bid from Custom Builders, Inc., in total roadway cost of $517,618.47, and authorize proper signatures on the agreement documents with Custom Builders, Inc. for the proposed construction.
And second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 5 is a approval of bridge inspection proposal from Bolton and Mink. Mr. Sandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a couple of meetings ago, we asked for the committee and council to authorize us moving forward with getting proposals for our bridge inspection work, our biannual bridge inspection work. We sent those out to all the local firms. We received a proposal back from each firm. We did an in-depth review of each proposal, found all of them to have a general understanding of what is being asked of them. You can see the costs respectively, with Bolton and Mink being the least expensive at $2,400. They are who inspected our bridges the last cycle, and so we're comfortable with how they did, what kind of work they did, and their inspection techniques. And so that's what staff is recommending, is that we move forward with Bolton and Mink for those bridge inspections to take place in October in a total amount of $2,400.
Great.
Get a motion.
Go ahead.
Recommend approval of Bolton and Mink's proposal for biannual bridge inspection services for a total amount of $2,400, authorizing proper signatures on the agreement documents.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion on bridge inspection? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Number 6 is a contract towing bid from Collins Brothers, and I believe the other is West Brainerd,
Correct.
correct? So if you want to tell us about those, Mr. Sandy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we got 2 bids back for our contract towing services, those being from Collins Brothers Towing and West Brainerd Auto. The bid forms are attached to the agenda request here. The items that were proposed on being basically exactly the same in items 1 through 14. The only thing that's different between the two is semi-wrecker towing and semi-wrecker winching. West Brainerd Auto does not have that capability, so they're not able to offer a price on that. Collins Brothers does have that capability with their equipment. But you can see items 1 through 14 are basically the exact same. Or maybe it was 1 through 13. Item 14, 15, 16, and 17 are what kind of set apart the 2 bids. That being the standby time, no keys fee, drop fee. Collins Brothers was less than West Brainerd Auto in all 3 of those instances. The no keys fee and drop fee are kind of important. Those are fees that are passed directly down to residents that are being towed. So, on an average bill, a resident that has their car towed would be paying $20 less than what West Brainerd would be, and that was kind of the decision maker on staff's behalf. So, what our recommendation is to authorize a contract with Collins Brothers Towing of Brainerd, and per the fee schedule they have attached, and entering into an agreement with them for the 2-year towing services.
I know that Collins Brothers is currently under contract. Is this their first year or second year contract?
This is their first. Will be wrapping up their first 2-year contract with us.
So I can see they fulfill all the needs that we have and have cheaper prices, but is there any reason, any problem that we've had this year why we wouldn't go with Collins Brothers over West?
We've had a couple of tickets that have been submitted to the PD and reviewed. They had some prices that were, different than what was in the towing bid, but they fixed it right away. And so, it's with any contractor, you're gonna have those instances where, you know, we catch something, you know, they don't show up right away to a crash site, but, you know, it's, from what I've heard from the PD, it's 2 half dozen one, half dozen another, you know,
They
it's,
both do a good job.
yep. We've had nothing but good luck with both.
Was there anything changed on the new contract that would clear some of that up? Was it?
Mostly, you know, we went over it last time, but the biggest things were the notices that were being sent out, and then making sure that their people that are actually towing the vehicles know this unit price schedule, so that when they do go downtown and start towing cars, residents can make kind of an educated decision on whether to have them drop it there. If they catch them in the act of towing their vehicle, you know, that drop fee comes into play, and they have to do some quick math on figuring out, does it make sense for me to pay the drop fee, or does it make sense for me to go pick it up later on? So, you know, I think those were the two things that were clarified, but nothing really else was written. You know, the specifications are pretty cut and dry, you know. We expect them to be available for towing when we need it, and if they're not, we'll address it at that time.
All right,
Got a motion?
go ahead.
Move to approve the bid from Collin Brothers Towing of Brainerd and authorize signatures on the agreement with Collin Brothers for the proposed scope of services.
And second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 7 is an update on the State Park Road account grant application that we submitted last year. Mr. Sandy, if you want to fill us in on the results of that.
Yes, Mr. Chair, so I'm happy to announce that we were awarded funding for that project, which is the resurfacing of Lum Park Road up to our boat landing there in Lum Park. The Park Board was made aware of this also at the last Park Board meeting. The next step for the city, the Safety and Public Works and City Council to consider is what do they want to do with engineering and design. So SBRA is a little bit of a different program. I've never worked with it before, but it follows our state aid program pretty closely. You have to work through the DNR and also through the county to submit things, which is a little bit different than what I'm used to being a state aid city. So there's a couple options, you know, the city could go, you know, obviously, we could do this in-house. We're not recommending that. This is one of those projects that's kind of over and above what our standard resurfacing reconstruction project is each year. It's grant funded. So that's option 1. Option 2, solicit RFPs to engineering firms. Or 3 is to WSN, you know, or Widseth did do the grant application. They received the funding. You could direct select Widseth also. So those are the 3 options. Just looking for some discussion on how you want to move forward with this.
You guys have any input on that?
I guess. I guess I think it'd probably be prudent to solicit RFPs, to open it up to a competitive process, unless I hear a compelling argument. Otherwise, maybe that's a question for.
Well, we had talked about this at the agenda meeting last week, and with everything that we've done, I think the master planning and both that and the grant application were done by Widseth. The all-out fair way to do it is put it out for an RFP. Are we slowing ourselves down with that? I'm not sure. Is this actually going to be something that has to get done this year? Is it something that
23, it would be.
by the end of next year?
Yep.
So sure, we could put it out for an RFP and maybe get some competitive bidding in there. I'm game for either one, whether we send it to Widseth or we put it out for RFP.
I'm gonna recuse myself from any conversation here because obviously of my.
As you should.
Shut it down.
I would say go for RFP. I mean, might end up settling with Widseth, but I think that's kind of the more responsible thing to do in looking at taxpayer money.
Well, it sounds like with the nature of the other projects that Widseth is involved with too, there's, you know, they'll likely have a strong application or
Yeah, even if they're,
proposal, I should say, that they can highlight that at that time, so.
you could still choose Widseth if they're not even the lowest bid because of what they know and what they've done.
Sure.
But, yeah, I kind of agree. Let's go ahead and send an emotion if you want.
And it's a grant fund, but it's still public funds, so I think it's the most prudent. And, yeah, so I'm ready with a motion. for authorize staff to develop and solicit RFPs for this project. And then I would add in there to, work with MnDOT state aid and then also obtain the county sponsorship.
Second.
All right. Motion and second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 8, direction on active code enforcement cases. I believe this is James Kramvik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So today we're bringing one property before the committee, 1306 Oak Street. Essentially, the issue with this property is there's multiple garbage bags that have been piled in the rear yard. So just a little bit of history on this property. So far this year, they've received a notice of violation as well as 2 citations regarding the garbage. Last year, this property also had issues with this, went through the citation and then an eventual abatement process twice. So staff is recommending, because of potential public health and safety issues, that this would be abated immediately. Just something to add, maybe going forward with this property, our section 320 of our code of ordinances does allow us, because it's a repeat offender, to just immediately cite the property instead of going through the notice of violation. I guess the reason for this is this property owner has never reached out to the city regarding this, and definitely some issues with neighbors viewing the garbage piles in the back there. So going forward, I think maybe we send the citation and then bring it to the Safety and Public Works Committee on the next available meeting.
Just for clarity, last year they did this, they had to be abated twice.
They had to be abated twice for this.
The year before that, were they ever abated? or
The year
just-
before, they were not.
Okay.
There's been other issues, snow removal, grass that's had to be abated, but the garbage is probably one of the main issues with the property.
Okay. The other issue we talked about is maybe this person might be doing this because they have extra trash and they don't want to pay for trash service, and maybe this is cheaper for them to go this route and just have the city abate that. Is there a way for us to look into the fact that if that's something that's going on there, it could possibly go on in other properties, and therefore we should maybe look at what the fine is for that? I know for abatement, we can only charge the cost of the abatement. We can't raise that price.
That's correct.
But specifically for purposes of being cheaper than an actual garbage removal service, I don't know if that's the case or not. I know there's different prices for different services too, but something that we could look into before coming back with this next meeting too.
Go ahead. Oh,
Well, I just have a question then. So it looks like there was, has it been 2 citations sent?
So far, yep, so $200 citations, because we did start this process before we adopted the new
Okay.
ordinance. We didn't go to the third one because of potential health and public safety issues with it. So we did the 1 notice of violation plus the 2 citations so far,
Okay.
Sean, could you?
Since the language was amended.
since the language has been
Photos
amended.
up?
So
I don't
the
know if you had
first
those
one was prior to that, the second one was the first one after the.
So this one is this year, and
That's
then,
why it was 100?
yep.
Okay.
So $200 citation so far.
Sure.
What I'm kind of looking at is I think we should abate it to resolve the situation.
Yeah.
But look at next time something comes up, go immediately to the citation.
Yep, so our ordinance does allow us to go to immediately go to a citation. I could look for a committee recommendation of what that citation amount may be. Maybe we look at that in the future. But we should be able to clean it up faster in the future.
Would you want that in the motion?
Right now, we do have a 100, 200, 300. I think it may be prudent to go directly to one $300 citation, and then go to abatement.
Life, health, safety type issues, which is what we kind of talked about.
Yeah, and specifically because this property has had continual issues with garbage.
That's what I'd make a motion on. I'd make a motion that we abate it and that we, next time there's an incident, we move immediately to a $300 citation.
Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Just gonna write that down. Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We move on to our final item on the agenda is a content review of section 725 of the Brainerd City Code. Are you gonna read it?
I can read it from front to back if you
It's
want.
only 40 pages.
Yeah, well,
I wonder from back to front.
it might make more sense that way. Mr. Chair, I can leave it up
Yes.
to the group on how you want me to go through this. I wrote a memo. That's kind of a broad overview of what is in this ordinance. As I kind of stated at our meeting when I met with Mr. O'Day, this ordinance really hasn't changed between what used to exist in section 725 to this one. There are some subtle changes throughout the document. Really gets more into depth on what the city is looking for from a stormwater management perspective, both during and after construction. But I can get into it and kind of go through the memo here. If you had a chance to read the ordinance, I'm sure that it put you to sleep. We've spent probably 6 months on this. The intent of this is so basically there's 3 ordinances that deal with stormwater in the city of Brainerd, section 430, section 720, and section 725. The intent of this ordinance is to repeal section 720 and 725 in its entirety and replace it with this new ordinance. And tonight, this is just a content review, so there's no ordinance in front of the city council tonight. It's strictly for looking at it, going over the ordinance, answering any questions you guys have. We would bring an ordinance forward at the next meeting if there's any changes, comments, concerns. Section 725.01 and .02, this is basically why are we doing it? What laws are in place that force us to do this? What is the scope of this ordinance? How do we interpret it? Basically, it's the how and why we have an ordinance like this. The how and why is because the city has an MS4 permit, a municipal separate storm sewer permit, which is authorized or administered by the MPCA. We have to meet the intent of that permit, and that permit is 50-some pages long. It goes over what the city is required to do when both on construction sites and for treating stormwater post-construction. That is the purpose of that .01 and .02. .03 is strictly definitions, so a lot of content there. From 725.04 on, it really gets into the meat of the ordinance. There's 2 basic, as part of any construction site, there's basically 2 activities that'll trigger submission of a stormwater plan. The first is basically land disturbing activities that are between 5,000 square feet and less than an acre. And then there's land disturbing activities that are over an acre. And different requirements for each set of those plans. So as part of any development, a contractor or a developer is required to submit one of these 2 plans. If it's under 5,000 square feet, they're exempt automatically. So getting into land disturbance activities subject to just a stormwater management plan, that is the 5,000 square feet to less than an acre. That section 725.04 goes over the requirements of what is supposed to be in that plan. These plans are submitted to engineering staff. They're reviewed for compliance to the ordinance language and either returned to the permittee as needs revisions or accepted through the building department process. For our sites over an acre, that's where section 725.05 comes into play. These are land disturbing activities that are administered by the MPCA, and those require a general stormwater permit through the MPCA. The city is still responsible for reviewing those site plans, making sure that they meet the intent of the permit, and also doing stormwater inspections on a regular basis. While the MPCA does make random reviews of sites, the city is kind of the ultimate authority when it comes to managing stormwater within the city limits. So those are the 2 types of plans that we require. Once again, the stormwater management plan is anything 5,000 square feet to less than an acre. The MPDES permit is anything an acre and above. So 2 different plans. One is much more substantial than the other. Obviously, the one over an acre is
Mr.
much
Sandy,
bigger.
I don't want to make you go through all the rest of the sections because I think we can read those. Anybody can pull these up and read through those if we want. Just the high points of the reason we're rewriting it into one section and getting rid of the old 725 and the 720, and the general idea of why we have to do it.
I can do that.
Okay.
So, As you know, the city's been going through a revision of its MS4 permit. We received coverage through, we've been using our consultant, HR Green. Sean is on the line tonight if there's specific questions, but this is part of that process that we've been going through. So we were issued coverage under the permit by the MPCA back in, I think, September of 2021. From that date, we have 1 year to update our stormwater pollution prevention plan, which is basically everything that we've done, our ordinances, our public participation materials, our public involvement, all of our minimum control measure plans. This is all kind of bound into one package that when the MPCA comes and audits the city, they look to make sure that our ordinances meet the requirements of the permit. And so that's the reason that we have stormwater ordinances, number one. Number two, we want to protect our waterways and our the stuff we have, right? So section 720 and 725 were combined. 720 is our illicit discharge ordinance, so it prohibits, mowing grass clippings into the street, dumping paint down storm drains. Those are illicit discharge. That section of the ordinance specifically prohibits that kind of stuff. Section 725, it just specifically relates to how do we treat stormwater off of development after construction is completed. So those are the two sections. Section 430 is more related to construction site, like during construction, erosion control, and sediment control. That's your silt fence, your stuff that goes up during construction that prevents materials from leaving the site. So we didn't change that at all. But so the main purpose for the rewrite of the ordinance was kind of changing the performance standards. Basically, the old ordinance was kind of discombobulated on how it was written. This new ordinance really focuses on we call it better site design. That's like open space protection, reduction of impervious surfaces, runoff minimization, rather than the old ordinance, which just focused on, we have this much impervious area, we need to retain this much stormwater and have this much runoff off the site after construction. This gets more into, yes, that's all great, but we also want to work on preserving our open spaces, our areas that naturally filter stormwater runoff. And so that's what this ordinance, it's kind of rewritten in a way that focuses more on that rather than our old ordinance, which is the preference of the MPCA in their stormwater manual.
Great.
Performance standards really haven't changed a lot though, so we're still required to maintain a certain amount of stormwater on site. That hasn't changed from the old ordinance to the new ordinance.
Got it.
I just have a really quick question for Paul.
Go ahead.
So for the MS4 permit, rewriting the ordinance, I'm on page 3. Am I understanding this right? So a bulleted point 2 and 3 on the very top of page 3 there, one talks about the 40 CFR. Is that like the federal portion? And the number 3 there talks about the state statute. Is that a federal requirement and then a state statute? And if that's correct, does this ordinance then obviously brings us into compliance with both of those as like a minimum standard?
Yeah, so all of this is passed down from the feds. It starts up at the federal level with their stormwater standards. They pass it down to the states to administer federal law. The states issue their permits to MS4s or cities over 5,000. So it is actually meeting compliance with federal law through the state, being that intermediary.
All right, thanks.
Do you need a motion, or do you
I
just
mean,
need some
I
direction
think
on?
if there's no questions or anything, we'll just bring an ordinance back. If you're really bored and reading this one night, if you have questions, I can answer those, but.
Again, you mean?
Insomnia cure.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm not really in need of a motion or looking for a motion. I think you guys know it's something you gotta do, and it looks like nobody has a problem with it at this point, so. We will move forward with that, have staff come back with another ordinance change in 2 weeks. And that is our final item on this agenda, so unless anybody has anything else to say, we are adjourned.